Hey everybody, it's Jessica DeMassa with WTF Health. What's the future of health? I'm talking to the who's who of health technology and healthcare innovation. And today we are going into one of the most mysterious places in all of healthcare, the hospital back office. Oh yeah, but we're not going alone. We're taking this guy with us. Arguably, I would say the CEO of one of the hottest health tech companies of 2020 that raised not one, not two, but three funding rounds. Please meet Sean Lane. Sean is the CEO of Olive. How are you?
I'm great, Jessica. How are you? Thanks for
I'm
having
doing
me.
great. It's great to have you with me. I'm really excited to talk to you. We'll find out what all those fundraising rounds have been all about. So
Wow, great.
I did a little bit of research on Olive, right? So I've spent a lot of time on your website. I'm trying to figure out exactly what you do. And so I know that your play is really into, tackling some of those back office workflow process things that are jacking up the price of healthcare to the tune. This is an admin expense deal, right? So it's like the one out of every $3 that we're spending on healthcare is going to admin expenses, and you are applying AI to automate those processes. Basically, I love the quote. It's like create the healthcare AI workforce to streamline those processes and squeeze out some of those expenses. So tell me a little bit more about that, because high level, it all sounds great. We're all
Yeah,
on board with that. But I think as far as the specifics go, sometimes it's been a little bit hard to understand exactly what workflow processes, what things you're working on. So
yeah.
tell us what it is you guys do.
Sure. So, there are so many different workflows inside a health system. I think we've mapped out 1,300. So there are many that we can automate. But primarily where we start is in revenue cycle. Revenue cycle, is encumbered by lots of workflows, lots of administrative processes, very burdensome. Things like checking claims and, working denials and managing whether or not you're getting paid, and if you're not getting paid, why you're not getting paid. So all of us trained to do that. She can keep track of denials, keep track of claims, change them, edit them, resubmit them. She works prior authorizations. Olive works eligibility and insurance benefits. Pretty much anything inside a revenue cycle is fair game. And that's where we start often. But
Okay.
we also do things in like supply chain, inventory management, invoicing, purchase orders. We do work in pharmacy and 340B and authorizations there, including HR. We do HR and IT and finance and accounting. Across the board, anything in the enterprise, our AI, Olive can, creates a workforce inside these health systems.
Okay. Can you give me like a very specific example on like maybe one thing? Like, I don't know, pick from that laundry list there. I'm
Yeah.
going to pick a supply chain one or something. Explain to me like what's happening currently back there. Because, we don't, unless you're in the hospital back office, you don't necessarily know what's really going on in there. And I have to say, even with Olive, it's like we've got you, a former intelligence officer for the Air Force, a team of 500 and $450 million in funding to figure this out. So tell us what you've discovered.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. Let me start with what I discovered when I started to look at this problem in 2012. When I was traveling around to all these different hospitals, I saw, seas of cubicles of these workers that were logging into systems and doing the same things over and over again. And here's one example of something that is kind of ridiculous. Like, health systems will submit thousands of claims a day in a lot of cases. And to know whether or not those claims are getting paid, they have to log into a website and check by claim number, which claim is getting paid and what's the status of it, and is it denied, and if it's denied, what's the code or the reason for the denial. And then they capture that information and they put it in spreadsheets that show the status of their thousands of claims. And invariably, those human workers never actually get through the list of claims to check. They never really know what the status is of their money coming in. That's something very easy that Olive does. We trained Olive to do checking the status of claims. It's a very kind of low hanging fruit for Olive. but it gives us this really interesting information. It allows us to know what an organization does, like what procedures and what tests and what labs, how they get paid for it and whether they get paid for it and how often and how long it takes. And from there, we create all these other things that Olive can do to help change that. So Olive may, go from checking the status of a claim to then seeing that it was denied because there wasn't enough medical information. And so she'll go into the EMR and she'll attach a medical record and resubmit it. So that's one example that it turns into hundreds of examples of things that Olive does.
Okay, that definitely clarifies. And I'm curious, when you were taking your tour of hospitals, were you surprised? Because I mean, you do not have a healthcare background up until now. So were you surprised at how held together by a paperclip, a spreadsheet, and a fax machine things were?
Well, I had seen it before. I mean, when I went into the intelligence community, 9/11 was a time that changed the intelligence community and forced it to share information, to connect, CIA with DIA and DEA and NSA and NGA and all the 3-letter agencies started to share data. But prior to that, they didn't have the internet. And when I walked into health systems, I noticed that they didn't have the internet, and it reminded me of what the intelligence community used to be like. So it was a familiar problem. Systems didn't talk to each other. Things weren't connected. They didn't know who anybody were. So I just realized we needed to build what I call the Internet of Healthcare, and we do that through these AI workers that are ultimately little routers that route information between systems.
Right, instead of people. I love that. I saw that on your site too, and I thought that really kind of helped explain what the value proposition is. Tell me, can you share with us any outcomes? You guys have been in business for a couple of years. Like I said, you're very well capitalized right now. We'll come back to that in a minute. But I mean, can you share any of the outcomes that you've seen? I understand you guys have about 600 hospitals that are using Olive one way or another. Mm-hmm. Brag for a minute.
No, it's amazing. So the amount of work that Olive does in a single month is the equivalent to about 15,000 FTE. So it's
15,000.
It's an incredible amount of work, and that what we've generated or signed up to generate is hundreds of millions of dollars of value back to our customers. So it's pretty cool. And the other thing too is it's when you go into these organizations and you talk to the people who used to spend all day, every day doing these jobs that they could never complete because they were always behind. When you go talk to them now, they can't imagine a world where they have to do that again. And, many of them would say they wouldn't work here anymore. They wouldn't work at the health system if they had to go back to the way it was, because it was just this really, bad feeling of having to do the exact same thing day in and day out. And it's indomitable. Like you could never catch up. So Olive has given them capacity. So they've been able to take on, bigger and better things. And so, I mean, the real outcomes are, hundreds of millions of dollars of cost savings, tens of thousands of, man hours being given back to healthcare, which right now we're just getting started. Like we're just scratching the surface. It's the very beginning.
How quick are you able to see an impact of Olive once one of your solutions, and I know there's a variety of them. There's a joke of that one of my colleagues and friends, Matthew Holt, has made about the deep purple, which yes, we'll get back to that too. But I'm curious, how quickly are you able to see impact in a health system when Olive is deployed? Mm-hmm. I mean, because that's been a pain point with any kind of tech solution in healthcare is the integration, changing the culture, making sure that they're on board with, doing it a new way when they've always done it this way, the fear factor of that, the downtime, all of that. So tell me, how fast can you get up and running, and how fast do you see impact and get that buy-in that you just mentioned?
Well, no, it's a great question. And just to answer this, I want to tell you about my history. I mean, in the intelligence community, we were challenged, during the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan to increased the speed at which we delivered intelligence to the warfighter by orders of magnitude, so 10 times. Things that took 10 days, we would go to 10 hours, then 10 minutes, then 10 seconds. And that was our kind of marching orders. Like that was our guidance. Like that was what we strive to do. So we kind of did the same thing with Olive and said, the things that today take 4 months, we want to take 4 weeks, and then eventually 4 days, and then eventually 4 hours. We're between the 4 weeks and 4 days right now of impact. So there are some things that we can turn on and start showing impact in 4 days. That's extremely exciting. I mean, when we started this, we were 4 months. I want to get to 4 seconds or 4 minutes. But we're between 4 weeks and 4 days in a lot of the implementations. But what happens is as we continue to do the same thing, Olive has one single brain, which is called Deep Purple. And that brain is essentially gives us the ability to reuse a lot of the intelligence and knowledge that we have, the wisdom that we gain as we work in all these different health systems, which allows us to deploy much more quickly, and also to get smarter after we deploy for the first time. So every time a new customer joins the Olive network, every customer benefits as a result of that because we've learned something new.
All right, I want to ask about the network effects on this, because this was one of the things that strikes me about your business model as kind of almost unbelievable, because we have traditionally seen in healthcare hospitals some of them be very reticent about sharing even their patient data with another hospital because of the fact that it's a competitive advantage for them to have it and hang on to it. So Olive is working on optimizing their business processes, the way they make money, the way they handle capacity, all of this stuff about how the health system works. How are you convincing them to share this knowledge with the rest of the Olive network?
Well, I think you said an important nuanced word at the end of that question, which was, how are you getting them to share knowledge? And that's exactly what they are sharing: is know-how, is wisdom. They're sharing the ability to do something better, and they're not sharing the data itself, and that's a big difference. So they're contributing the data to a brain, and that brain, as a factor of that contribution, gets smarter. And when one olive learns, all olives learn. So if an olive learns to do something in a health system in Minnesota, every olive across the country instantly learns that exact same thing. Think about like a self-driving car network. If a self-driving car gets into a crash and it then learns from that crash, it can apply that learning to every self-driving car through a software update. Same thing happens with every olive. And they're getting smarter. So the reason why this is incredibly important is because Olive is a network. You're buying a network. You're not buying a bot, or you're not buying an automation. You're buying a network. And it's really, really important to convince the customer that the contribution of this wisdom to a network is the only thing that's going to bring us into the future, because otherwise wisdom in healthcare is disaggregated. And it's true. I mean, right now, like the know-how to do the back office stuff, or the front office stuff, or the middle office stuff, it's all sitting in the brains of 16 million employees or in some binder somewhere. And healthcare, unlike other industries, has not yet aggregated that wisdom and then been able to disseminate it freely across the network.
So I totally agree with that. And I think that's a very astute observation. So, I mean, fast forward to me, is the future that all hospitals run the same on the back end so that, things can be optimized in other ways?
So I do think there will be a lot of standardization. In order for a network and a system to work efficiently, there's got to be like homogeneity in the network, or homeostasis. And I think you achieve that to some degree. Humans are very variable. Humans do things differently, not always for any good reason other than that's what they were taught to do. With all of you, you're allowed to standardize the workers. So if you're a CEO of a health system, you're going to have, say you have 20,000, you have a workforce of 20,000, and let's say 17,000 are human workers and 3,000 are AI workers, are olives. Your AI workers are going to be very consistent, but they're also going to do the same exact thing every day, but they're also going to grow. They're going to they're going to learn and get smarter kind of as a system together. But the future is not just them all working the same. The future is that they all grow because of there's a concept called like genetic learning or genetic algorithms. So basically what happens is, yeah, so let's say an olive mutates, like an olive encounters something different, and that mutation actually leads to a better result. So maybe that olive clicks somewhere or adds something or takes data in a different way. And the result of that is better than what has happened before. Well, that new result, because of that mutation, lives in the system. It's like evolution. So the reality is like the future is a system that evolves based on, these genetic algorithms and this natural selection of ways of doing work. If that makes sense.
Yeah, I know. I think that does make sense. And I think it's interesting because it's almost like it takes, maybe I'm oversimplifying, I probably am, but it seems like it takes the best practices of everything and just optimizes that across.
Sure.
And makes that available to everybody.
Yeah.
And that's really like the promise of, what I think we've been hearing about AI in healthcare, but may not have often seen, to your point earlier about how fragmented everything is.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask, because of that, because there are a lot of different companies that are trying to take AI and work it into healthcare, who do you think you compete with? Or who thinks they compete with you? That might be a better question.
I think it's two different answers, right? I think, I look at Google and Apple, and I think in Microsoft to some degree, I think Google and Apple are very, have the ability if they wanted to do some pretty incredible things in healthcare, and I hope they do. Specifically, Apple's work that they're doing around access to data, connecting it with the authentication of a human. That authentication layer is incredibly powerful. It could be incredibly powerful for, the flow of information, the way we've always dreamed of in healthcare. Also, like Google knows how to handle lots of large data and, organize it in a way that has never really been organized in healthcare. So I think of them as like, that's more akin to what we're trying to do over time. Now, people who consider us competitors, there's probably people who do automation or people working in revenue cycle or people, that's who probably considers us competitors.
Yeah, I was going to say, I know there are a lot of companies that are trying to tackle, but they're point solutions, and clearly you guys are not. You're taking that, taking those disaggregated points and pulling them together into one seamless learning whole, which is very cool. I wanted to hear a little bit about what's next. So, we teased at the top of this about the fact that you've closed 3 rounds this year. Here we are, we're sitting in the middle of December. You got one more in you think, Sean? You got a couple of weeks.
Probably not.
But amongst, it's not only just the amounts of those rounds, that you've raised. You guys are all told total $450 million. And I think it was like more than 200 million came in this year, right? But it's also the investors who've decided to back you. These are not only, well-known tech funds, but also well-known healthcare funds. We'll name drop a couple of them. You got Sequoia in there, Tiger Global, Kusla Ventures, General Catalyst, Oak HCFT is in there. The list goes on and on. GV is in there, Drive Capital. What is it that you think really captures the imagination or the pocketbook, as it is, of some of these funders when it comes to Olive? Because 3 in 1 year is pretty remarkable. And yeah.
Well, I think it's, it wasn't necessarily expected, but I think there's a few things. One is the market is absolutely enormous. It's 18% of the US GDP. And we found ourselves in the middle of the financial flow in healthcare. So we found ourselves automating a lot of the payments of healthcare. So we're in an interesting spot where we, are able to touch over time 18% of the US GDP. So that's pretty powerful.
Yeah.
The second thing is that we have the appetite to build a really important company that lasts for a long, long time. None of the management team are particularly interested in like exiting or doing anything like that anytime soon. Like we want to build a really, really important company. We think that healthcare needs an important technology company. So we'd like to, take a shot at doing that, building one of those. If you go to any other industry and ask what company has disrupted it, you'll get a very easy answer. Shopping, Amazon, travel, Airbnb, transportation, Uber, Tesla. I mean, there's an answer for pretty much everyone except for healthcare. So we think it deserves one. And then the other thing is that we have a pretty clear vision. So we have a 5-part vision of which we are unfolding one at a time. And these steps, once we are able to do them all, we think we'll have built a really, really big company. Our first one was the AI worker. So all of doing all that back office work. That's an incredible, it's been picked up incredibly by our customers. By the way, the customers saying that they want to hire Olive has been probably the biggest driving force of the investment.
Okay, fair enough.
The market has responded. There's a product market fit. So the first big thing we're going to do is the AI worker. The second one, which comes out very, very soon, is an AI coworker.
Oh, an AI coworker? Does it also have a name?
It's Olive. So Olive will be the name for everything. So we call the AI worker Olive Works. We call the AI coworker Olive Helps.
Okay.
And she'll be on your desktop with you as you're working, and she'll feed intelligence to you as you're doing your job, so that you can do your job better, more efficiently, without errors. And we're hope to turn human workers into superhuman workers.
That almost sounds to me, as you're describing it, like, remember Clippy from Microsoft? It almost sounds like that.
Yeah, it's like, imagine if Clippy were done in a time where the technology was able to make it an incredible experience with the user interface that was also incredible. And
the ability to change Clippy from a paperclip to a dog was not the user experience you wanted. What do you mean?
I liked it. Obviously, I liked it.
All right, keep going. I want to hear the rest of the strategy moving forward. So that's 2. Clippy is 2.
The third is actually a little bit out of left field, and we will be doing this in beta in January, or at least Q1. We call that Olive Assures. So on the assurance theme, we will be paying claims immediately. So we have almost a petabyte of claims data. We know we can assess the risk of whether or not a claim is going to be paid or not. And in the event that we believe it will be paid, we intend to pay it immediately. So this
very exciting.
Changes kind of everything. So that's a big move that we're making pretty soon. So that's step 3.
All right, before we go to 4, can I ask a quick question here? I heard the word assurance just landed in there. And knowing the General Catalyst connection to Olive and Hema Taneja, who is a principal at GC, and also they just wrote a book about health assurance and is now the CEO of the Health Assurance SPAC. Should we read into this in any way?
I mean, you should read into the fact that we all collaborate, and that's where that name came from. And it's my interpretation of the beginning of achieving assurance.
Okay.
So you should read into the fact that it is absolutely connected.
Good. All right. Glad we're on it. Okay. Go to 4.
4 is, when I first started in healthcare, I had this idea that we needed to build the internet of healthcare. And that was like a network. Well, the cool thing is we put these AI routers now in 700 plus hospitals and growing at an incredible pace. So the next big step, we call it Olive Shares, and that is the AI network. Sending medical records, images, labs, and tests from Olive to Olive across the country. Being able to take data and extract and then transport that data and then load it into the resident system. So Olive is already equipped to do that, but obviously there's a lot of policy work that we need to do to make that happen. But that's step 4.
Okay.
And then step 5 is the kind of final step. And we have this incredible brain, Deep Purple, with about a petabyte, which is growing at an incredible rate, exponentially. And ultimately, we want physicians and clinicians to know what Olive knows. So if we have access to this information, like about treatments and care plans and care pathways and care models and clinical trials and things like that, we want to be able to provide that to the physician when they need it. So think of it as like an AI-powered decision support, where we're able to say, hey, I see that you just diagnosed this rare, child, pediatric oncology diagnosis. Here are the 6 doctors who have done that recently. Cool. Here's a clinical trial that can apply to this particular patient. So things like that. So that'll be the kind of 5th step. And we want to do that over the course of time and just build on those.
All right. How far out are we talking to accomplish all 5 steps?
Well, we should have 3 of them launched, maybe 4 launched this in 2021.
Okay.
With the final 2 really coming into play in 2022.
Okay. So we hear the healthcare admin side of things, the payment thing, which is very cool, to the instantaneous payment of claims, which is going to help with cash flow for sure for these hospitals. Very cool there. And then eventually care delivery, right?
Mm-hmm.
What's the big picture aim here? I mean,
we think we can reallocate $1 trillion.
Reallocate $1 trillion of that total healthcare spend in this country, and reallocate it to where?
Well, clinical, hopefully the treatment of patients, service lines, getting better care delivered, new drug discoveries, new treatment, new cancer centers, new equipment to diagnose and labs and all the things that like the treatment of patients. We're not only moving $1 trillion of money, we think we can move like 8.3 billion hours of humans' time to be focused on things that matter.
That's very cool. All right, I have to ask, why deep purple?
Well, so there's a story behind it. When you're doing deep learning models, which is something we like to do at Olive, you have you kind of name it deep, and then whatever the thing is that you're working on, and our color is purple. So the brain became Deep Purple. And of course there's a band named
This has something to do with the band?
It does. It has everything to do with deep learning and then the color purple, but it also is the name of a band, and Smoke on the Water is a cool song. So I do love the play that it is also a band, but it has mostly to do about deep learning and our color, which is purple.
All right. And you're not playing that song whenever something new is discovered? I kind of feel like that should be your intro music. Oh, well, Sean, seriously, I appreciate your time walking through all of that, particularly the strategy moving forward. You guys are definitely a company that I think everybody has been really, just the word on the street that I'm hearing, everybody's been really intrigued by you, but nobody really understood what you guys did. So I appreciate you taking the time to kind of walk through more of the specific examples. I think, on the health tech side and on the innovation side in healthcare, we might be a little bit fatigued on the AI in healthcare buzz. So it's exciting to see a company that's actually really doing something there and making an impact, and has some really bold, big plans for what's next. So that's really exciting. Any last things you want to say about what you got your eye on maybe in the short term in terms of acquisitions? Like I said at the beginning, that Verada acquisition was pretty big news recently, coming after your last round this year. Anything else you got your eye on?
No particular companies. We are always open to, finding the best of breed teams and products that are, brought the prior authorization is an absolute, huge burden in healthcare, and having a great team focused on it was a rare thing. So we found a rare gem, and we decided that we would work better, more closely together. So that was a really good acquisition for our company, and it's really exciting for what we're going to be able to do. We're also able to now connect the payer with the provider like they've never been connected, because we're working now with automation inside the prior auth on the payer side. So it connects it like a fiber optic cable versus a fax machine.
That's very exciting too. So from like the mystery of the back room to now we're jumping into the pair. I love it. And I love that you've taken this military intelligence approach to healthcare. Finally. This is what it takes, people. This is what it takes.
I only know one thing. I just applied it to a different industry.
Hey, well, we're glad you're here applying it to healthcare. Thanks a lot. Sean, it's a pleasure to talk to you. Thank you again for taking the time out today. I really appreciated learning so much about Olive. Best of luck as you guys move forward. We'll look forward to the announcement for the next 4th fundraise here in 2020. Why not, right? You can hit that SPAC up that Heyman's the head of, I mean.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just keep smiling, Sean. All right.
Yeah.
All right, everybody. Check out Olive. Please take a look at what they're doing. Some pretty remarkable stuff. And thanks again to Sean Lane, CEO, for joining us here today. I'm Jessica DeMassa with WTF Health. What's the Future Health? For more interviews with thought leaders like Sean, who are trying to disrupt the system from the inside out, please check out my YouTube channel over at youtube.com/WTF Health. We'll talk to you guys soon. Thanks so much for joining us.